Hello again, Hawks. Welcome back. This is Mr. Johnson, and here we are on day 2 of talking about value for art class for the week. Last time we were together, you guys spent a couple minutes practicing making a 4-stage value scale, practicing using the same kind of pencil marks with varying degrees of pressure to make the range of darkest to lightest. Today, we are going to take those basic skills and we're going to now talk about some expert level value skills. This is going to guide us through our next project. One thing that we want to consider, and this is kind of the goal of our expert level values. Your brain sees an object, and between the information your eyeballs send to your brain and your brain's understanding of that, your brain gets that this is a 3-dimensional object. Okay? The way that your brain has learned to understand that is because of the way that light works off of the surface. There is a light source that is highlighting this brightest area that shows, or your brain understands, that this part must be closest to the light source. Your brain also understands that this darkest part must be farther away. And because your brain interprets the lightness and darkness, it can understand that there is a front and a farther away part, or a front and a back. Similarly, your brain knows this is not just a printout of an apple, it's a 3-dimensional object, because again, we have a highlight on the surface that is closest to the light source. You will notice that it is darker farther away. So here's how we're going to use our value skills to show that things are 3-dimensional. Last time we were together, we focused on short back and forth lines, small overlapping circles. That is the same method we're going to use. On your scrap piece of paper that you're going to draw along with me, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to start off with a circle, or an oval, or a blob shape. Does not matter, does not have to be perfect. In addition to this object, which right now is only 2-dimensional, this has height and it has width, but your brain does not understand that this could look 3-dimensional. We are also going to include a light source. That could be the sun, that could be a lamp, that could be the light on your phone, but that light source is going to help your brain understand which part of the object is closer and which part is farther away. If this sounds complicated, remember we're going to go slowly through this. We're going to work on this together, and you will be achieving expert level value skills today. So I have my 2-dimensional shape. Over here to the right, I'm going to put a light source. You can draw a sun or a light bulb. We just need some kind of a clue or a symbol that our light is coming from over here and it is shining that way. Now, the part of this object that is closest to the light source is going to be the lightest. The part of the object that is farthest away from the light source is going to be the darkest. Now I'm going to start off and show you the wrong way to do this. If I have a shape and I have a light source, and I know that I'm going to use my value scale skills to show the darkest and lightest parts, it will not look like a properly 3-dimensional object if I do scribbles, or if I just do a straight line fade or kind of ombre toward the light source. Okay? That's kind of a second grader's version of kind of understanding it. It is correct because it is lighter close to the light source. It is darker farther away from the light source, but this doesn't follow the curve. Assuming this is a spherical shape, our lines actually need to follow the rounded contour of the shape. And again, we're getting expert level here, so stick with me. So, kind of okay. We would give this a generally so-so kind of evaluation. Let's look at this a little bit differently. We're going to throw down a blob shape again. We're going to throw down a light source again. This is not a very good light bulb, stick with me. We know that the light source is shining light down this way. We know that our highlight is going to be here, closest to the light source. We know that way over here on the back side is going to be the darkest part of the shadow, or the darkest value. The key to making this look like an actual three-dimensional sphere is we need to follow the curves or the contour of this shape. So I'm going to start, unlike we did on our value scale, I'm going to start with my darkest value. And this time I want you guys to notice, instead of just going straight across, I'm going to be blending this darkest value in almost like a crescent shape. I'm kind of following the curve. You guys might notice that it's a little bit thicker dark section here, and it tapers or it gets skinnier as we come up the edge. So I'm going to do, it almost looks like we're putting a boomerang or like a smiley face kind of shape on the edge. Now, just like we did on our value scale, we tried to keep our movements consistent, but we adjusted the pressure, how hard we're pushing down. So to make this appear three-dimensional, remember our darkest is here, far away from our light source. We'll go LS for light source. And we want our highlight to be up here, but we're following that curved contour of the shape. So I'm going to keep doing my swirls and back and forth lines, and I'm going to keep following this kind of letter C shape or crescent moon shape. And as I gradually work my way up the sphere, I'm keeping my movements the same, but I'm pushing a little more lightly and a little more lightly. You guys will also notice that this crescent shape is starting to get smaller as I approach where my highlight is going to be, that part of my sphere that is closest to the light source. So I'm going to gradually lighten and lighten and lighten. And this is starting to have the illusion, we are tricking our brains, it's starting to have the illusion that this is a three-dimensional shape. When I'm up in these lightest values, I am barely touching the paper with that pencil. Now at this stage, you guys will notice, just like on our value scale, that we've got some of these rows. You can kind of tell darker, a little bit lighter, 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 lighter. So now I can come back in, again, pushing down really hard on the darkest values. Most of my marks were this way, kind of up to the right, kind of in line with that light source. Now I'm going to come, instead of going this way, I'm going to lightly come the opposite direction. And that's just going to help smooth out or soften the difference between those lighter and darker areas. Now I want to tell you, if you are struggling in any way with this, this is practice. I want to tell you, if you are struggling in any way with this, this is going to be an option. If you don't want to include this on your project that we'll talk about tomorrow, then it's an option and you can leave it out. If you're up for a challenge, and I want you to give it a shot. Okay? So my goal right now, I'm not trying to darken everything, I'm just trying to smooth out those differences. And what we end up with is the illusion that this is a three-dimensional form. Okay? Another little trick you can do if you don't mind getting messy, to smooth this out, you just take your fingertip, you can kind of swirl and polish and smudge some of that around, and it'll give you a nice, even softer appearance. So our goal is darkest to lightest, or farthest away from the light source to the closest, and we tried to work following the curve or the rounded part of that sphere as opposed to that kind of scribbly mess. Okay? Now, something else, our second expert level value. In the first video, I said you cannot adjust lightness or darkness with a marker. That was kind of half true. You can adjust the lightness or darkness with a marker, but it does not depend on pressure. Okay? We're going to zoom in and we'll take a quick look at some options. Let's say I'm filling up a shape with my marker. Doesn't matter if I push hard or light, but I can use multiple marks to show different values. Here's what I mean. If I wanted to do what's called hatching, hatching is using short parallel lines. If I wanted to hatch, and let's pretend I had a light source here, if I was on the part farthest from the light source, then I could use densely packed hatches, meaning I'm putting lots of lines and jamming them all together. Then when I get to my lighter value, I can't adjust the color of the ink, but I can let a little bit more white paper show through. Still doing the same marks, just not as closely. When I get to my lighter values still, I leave a little bit more space. When I get to my lightest values, I leave the most space. There's kind of a jump here from solid black to this gray, so right in between the two, I can throw a couple more hatch marks to kind of soften that up. And that gives the illusion that we have a highlight and a shadow. Similarly, I could do what is called stippling. Let's say my light source is here. If I have a highlight here closest to the light source, and I have a shadow out here farthest from the light source, stippling is layering dots. If you really like detail, stippling is for you. I will tell you that stippling takes forever. So on my darkest values, I'm going to concentrate all those dots, meaning I'm just packing a ton of them on there. I'm trying to leave as little white space showing as possible. As I work up this crescent shape, I'm still doing the same kind of dots, but I'm leaving just a little bit more white space showing through. As I get even lighter toward the highlight, the lightest part, I'm going to space it out a little bit more. There's a pretty big jump between my darkest and my next darkest value, or my next lightest section, so I can always come back in and re-stipple, add more dots. And because it's a marker, I don't have to push hard. It's tempting to start mashing the marker in. Try to avoid that if you're doing this with a marker. Okay, the third option, so if we have hatching, do an H for hatching, we have S for stippling. The third option with a marker, if you want, is we can do cross hatching. So there's a C and H for cross hatching. Light source is up here, and this time instead of just hatching with lines in a single direction, we can take these guys, and not only do we have lines going this way, we come in at an opposite direction, and that helps fill in that darkest value. We do a row in this direction, we leave a little bit more space showing, and these guys crisscross each other. Now I've got a big old fat Sharpie here, so controlling my values with a fat Sharpie is a little bit tricky, especially because this is a smaller shape. But this is a way that with marker you can also give the illusion of three-dimensionality. Okay? This skill, whether you use it with pencil or with ink, is something you'll have the choice to include when we talk about your actual project on our third day.